This is the second part of the session on hyperparathyroidism. Today we'll discuss about the investigations and management. So the blood investigations include serum calcium, serum parathyroid hormone, serum phosphate and serum vitamin D, and serum alkaline phosphatase, and the 24-hour urine calcium. These investigations will help us in differentiating the various types of hyperparathyroidism based on the etiology. So these are some of the common things. In primary hyperparathyroidism, the serum parathyroid hormone and serum calcium are elevated. In all three forms of hyperparathyroidism, the serum parathyroid hormone level is elevated. In primary and tertiary, the serum calcium levels are elevated, while in secondary type, it's either normal or decreased. Serum phosphate levels are classically reduced in primary hyperparathyroidism, can be normal or increased in secondary, while in tertiary it is increased. Hyperphosphatemia is generally seen as part of chronic renal disease, which may be the primary etiological reason in secondary and tertiary types of hyperparathyroidism. Other investigations include assessment of the bones. So we have the DEXA scan to assess the bone density. So DEXA scan involves evaluation of the lumbosacrum, the hip and the forearm. Similarly, X-ray of the skull will reveal the salt and pepper appearance. X-ray of the phalanges or hand will reveal the subperiosteal erosion of the middle phalanx. X-ray of the spine will show the Ruger-Jersey spine. You can see the subperiosteal erosion, the cystic bony swellings, salt and pepper appearance, and the Ruger-Jersey appearance. Now for evaluation regarding familial types and to assess for the stones in the kidneys and gallstones, an ultrasound of the abdomen will help assess the renal and pancreatic disease, to assess for gallstones and pheochromocytoma. Ultrasound or CT of the neck will help in assessing the parathyroid and the thyroid glands and the lymph node status. The thallium technetium scan shows hot spots in the case of parathyroid adenomas. Technetium 99M labeled SESTAMB isotope scan is more sensitive and better than the thallium technetium scan. SESTAMB parathyroid scan with SPECT again is an improvement on the above for diagnosing parathyroid adenomas. So this is a CT showing the lesion here. It's a parathyroid scan. You can see the lesion here. And this is with the SPECT. You can see the localization here. Now, these are the non-invasive localization tests, which begins with the ultrasound of the neck or CT of the neck, and then goes on for the technetium scan and the various improvements on that. Now, the invasive localization tests include the selective parathyroid venous sampling, and alternatively, the parathyroid angiography can be done. It has been said by Dr. John Dorfman in 1968, the only localizing study indicated in a patient with untreated primary hyperparathyroidism is to localize an experienced parathyroid surgeon. This sums up the surgical treatment of parathyroid glands in general. So we have medical management as well as surgical management. So medical management revolves around regular monitoring of the calcium levels, ensure that the patient has a low calcium diet, and to avoid excess intake of calcium, to avoid drugs or to stop drugs like thiazides and lithium, which can result in hypercalcemia or hyperparathyroidism, to ensure that the person has good hydration and regular exercise. Now, drugs that reduce calcium include bisphosphonates like alendronate. It also improves the bone marrow density. We have calcium receptor agonists Cinacalcet, which reduces the serum calcium levels. There are calcium mimetic drugs which reduce parathyroid hormone and calcium levels. Estrogen supplements also reduce calcium levels. Now, surgical management. Surgery is the only curative option available to cure hyperparathyroidism. So, a number of procedures are there. The traditional parathyroidectomy is there, which includes total parathyroidectomy or subtotal parathyroidectomy or total parathyroidectomy with autotransplantation. The modern innovations include the minimally invasive parathyroidectomy and the endoscopic parathyroidectomy. The indications for surgery. In the asymptomatic patient, the serum calcium is more than 11 milligram per deciliter. If the 24-hour urinary calcium is more than 400 milligrams, the creatinine clearance is less than 60 ml per minute, or if the bone density decreases by more than 2.5 standard deviations, or if the age is below 50 years. They are all indications for surgery. In those with symptoms, especially as the symptomatic patient with nephrolithiasis, osteitis fibrosa cystica, pancreatitis or peptic ulcer disease are also an indication for surgery. Then the obvious indication is parathyroid carcinoma and in acute parathyroid crisis. A few words about the conventional parathyroidectomy. It's done under general anesthesia and it involves bilateral neck exploration and to remove the parathyroid glands. For an adenoma, the excision of the gland with the adenoma is done. In the case of hyperplasia, it usually affects all 4 glands. So, if subtotal parathyroidectomy is done, then excision of 3.5 glands is done. In the case of total parathyroidectomy, all 4 glands are excised and 1/3 of one gland is implanted in the forearm muscle or the sternocleidomastoid muscle. In the case of carcinoma, neck exploration is done with en bloc excision of the tumor mass and the ipsilateral thyroid lobe and node dissection. So here the tumor mass which involves the parathyroid gland as well as the thyroid lobe on that side, that is hemithyrectomy involving that side, and the nodal dissection on the same side is done. Now, while doing surgery for hyperparathyroidism, it is important to look for ectopic glands. In 20% it can be seen the thymus, in 5 to 10% the posterior neck, 5% intrathyroid, and 2% the anterior mediastinum. The serum levels of parathyroid hormone are measured pre-incision, then pre-removal just before removing the gland, and then 5 minutes after removal of the gland and 10 minutes after removal. On comparing these values, we can confirm that we have removed all the glands or there is still an ectopic gland at some other site. So the drop in the parathyroid hormone value is assessed to know whether we have removed all of the parathyroid glands, as the half-life of parathyroid hormone is only 4 minutes. Regarding minimally invasive parathyroidectomy, it is done in the case of single adenoma involving a single parathyroid gland. It is unilateral parathyroidectomy with removal of the adenoma and the involved parathyroid gland using a limited neck exploration. So it can be done under local anesthesia or cervical block anesthesia. The incision is usually small, about 2 to 4 centimeter. Here it is very important that the center has facilities for preoperative localization like the Sestamibi combined with SPECT. Similarly, there should be facilities for intraoperative parathyroid hormone assay to look for the parathyroid hormone drop. If both facilities are available, then such a procedure may be attempted. Similarly, endoscopic parathyroidectomy was first done by M. Gagner. It is also done using a laparoscope. It is limited to removal of an adenoma involving a single parathyroid gland. The complications related to parathyroid surgery include hemorrhage, persistent hyperparathyroidism, especially if you have missed an ectopic parathyroid gland, recurrent hyperparathyroidism, permanent hypoparathyroidism, recurrent laryngeal nerve injury, a condition known as hungry bone syndrome, where the patient eventually presents with hypocalcemia, hypophosphatemia, hypomagnesemia, and hyperkalemia. Then hypercalcemia. These are the complications of parathyroid surgery. Now regarding treatment of secondary hyperparathyroidism, here the treatment preferred is medical. So where medical management is the mainstay of treatment. So I told you a chronic renal disease or a malabsorption disease or a vitamin D deficiency rickets. So it's important to correct the vitamin D deficiency. So you can give vitamin D 60,000 units weekly for 8 to 12 weeks. You can correct the hypercalcemia with oral calcium supplements. Then correction of the hyperphosphatemia, which is seen in the chronic renal disease. You restrict the dietary phosphates. You can use oral phosphate binders like calcium carbonate, calcium acetate, calcium receptor agonist, cinacalcet reduces the parathyroid hormone secretion. Now surgery is indicated only in severe secondary hyperparathyroidism and in calciphylaxis. In severe means the parathyroid hormone is more than 800 picogram per ml. Here the patient has hypercalcemia and hyperphosphatemia, refractory to medical therapy. Now subtotal parathyroidectomy or total parathyroidectomy with autotransplantation is the preferred surgery in such an event. Now regarding treatment of tertiary hyperparathyroidism, here surgery is the treatment of choice. Again, subtotal parathyroidectomy or total parathyroidectomy with autotransplantation is done. The hypercalcemia and the hyperphosphatemia are corrected. Dietary phosphate and calcium restrictions. Calcium-mimetic drugs like cinacalcet is used to reduce the parathyroid hormone and the calcium levels. A few words about autotransplantation. It is usually done immediately along with the parathyroid gland removal. And usually to autotransplant you use the non-dominant forearm. The 1 into 3 mm slices are taken. Around 20 to 25 slices of the gland, half of the gland is, or 1/3 of the gland is taken and made into 20 to 25 slices of size 1 into 3 mm. Approximately 50 milligrams of the tissue is available, and it's implanted into the opposite, that is the non-dominant brachioradialis muscle or the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And then the site is marked with a clip so that in the event of persistent hyperparathyroidism or recurrence, then we can go to the marked site and remove the gland. Now a few words about parathyroid carcinoma. It's a rare cause of primary hyperparathyroidism. The etiology is previous neck irradiation, chronic renal failure, mutation in the HRPT2 gene, hyperparathyroidism jaw tumor syndrome. So it usually presents as a nodule in the neck in 50% cases. So the presentation of hyperparathyroidism with palpable neck nodules may suggest parathyroid carcinoma. Histology reveals thick fibrous bands, vascular and capsular invasion. Now preoperative suspicion in hyperparathyroidism comes if the serum calcium level is very high, more than 14 mg per deciliter, very high parathyroid hormone levels and a palpable parathyroid gland. And the treatment, surgery is the mainstay of treatment. Neck exploration with en bloc excision of the tumor mass and ipsilateral hemithyroidectomy with central or lateral neck node dissection. Medical management is directed towards control of hypercalcemia. Even if there is metastasis or recurrence, the treatment is surgery, as death is usually due to complications from excess parathyroid hormone levels. Adjuvant therapy includes radiation and chemotherapy. Now about hyperparathyroid crisis. Acute hyperparathyroidism is a rare condition but dangerous presentation with abdominal pain, vomiting, dehydration, oliguria, muscular weakness and death. It usually occurs due to a sudden increase in the parathyroid hormone levels, either due to rupture of a parathyroid cyst or due to bleeding in a parathyroid tumor. It can be due to severe dehydration or the presence of secondaries in bone. Normally, the serum calcium levels may be as high as 12 milligram per deciliter above, but it can be even higher to be more than 14 milligram per deciliter, in which case it will result in coma and death. The treatment is directed towards correction of dehydration. You rehydrate using normal saline at the rate of 300 ml per hour. You enhance the renal excretion by inducing forced diuresis using 3 to 5 liters of saline along with a diuretic like furosemide. You inhibit the bone resorption by giving drugs like calcitonin, bisphosphonates like pamidronate, and steroids like prednisolone. What is persistent hyperparathyroidism? This means that the biochemical hyperparathyroidism is still evident within the first 6 months after the surgical exploration. The usual cause is failure to find ectopic or a missed adenoma. Recurrent hyperparathyroidism. This refers to recurrence of hypercalcemia after a period of 12 months following a initial parathyroid surgery. So this cause is usually growth of hyperplastic tissue knowingly or unknowingly left behind at the initial surgery. That means either hyperplasia of an autotransplant tissue or hyperplasia of parathyroidomatosis, that is a nodular parathyroid tissue caused by rupture of abnormal tissue at the initial surgery. So these are the common causes for recurrent hyperparathyroidism. The treatment is same as that of primary hyperparathyroidism, that is you plan a remedial parathyroidectomy as well as medically manage the hypercalcemia and the hyperparathyroidism. Similarly, in the case of ectopic sites behind the sternum, a median sternotomy can also be done to look for the ectopic sites. So here invasive or non-invasive localization tests are a must prior to planning a remedial parathyroid surgery. Thank you.